All right, America, welcome back. I'm Rich Valdez, sitting in for John Tabacco and Frank Morano here on Liquid Lunch TV, on Newsmax TV, and we are happy to have Alan Tonelson with us. He's the founder of Reality Check. It's a blog on lots of different issues, and we're going to pick up where we left off discussing what is going on Wall Street. Is Wall Street sounding the alarm saying, no more Warren, we'll go with Trump or we'll stay home? Alan Tonelson, welcome to the program.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what are your thoughts on this latest threat coming out of Wall Street?
Well, it's of course not entirely clear how widespread these Wall Street views are. I mean, I'm sure the CNBC writer knows Wall Street well and was speaking to folks who he thought were pretty representative of the thinking of the hedge fund community.
It almost sounds like he's a friend of yours.
No, but I mean, I assume that since he has a job, he's sort of competent.
Yeah.
But let's say that these views are in fact representative. It seems to me that Wall Street is trying to tell Democratic primary voters, if you make Elizabeth Warren your party's nominee for president, we're going all out for Trump. Because although we're not in love with Joe Biden, we'd certainly rather deal with him as president than we would with her. The question is, how effective will this message be with those Democratic primary voters who do no doubt lean farther to the left than the rest of the Democratic electorate and who are certainly not in love with Wall Street?
So I think that's a good question. And I'm going to just go to you because I think you are the resident official on suburban women, right? You have been coined this. So will the suburban women is, I think, what everybody's after in the voting bloc, because there's so many of them. Will this voting bloc come out against Elizabeth Warren?
Well, I think that Elizabeth Warren is lacking a couple of things. You said she's been called America's mother-in-law. She does, for that reason, sort of lack those soft edges that women like to see in other women. There's no one harsher on another woman running for office than a woman. So Elizabeth Warren cannot win without that block of suburban women voters. Those are the last-minute voters. Those are what pollsters would call low-information voters. Which I always think sounds offensive, but it just means that women are busy. They take care of 85% of the household duties. They're running kids to the carpool. They're working their own jobs. But they are that critical voter, and they're going to be the 10 to 15% of that swing voter that people are going to need to get elected. So for women in the suburbs, what they're looking for is how does some of these financial decisions hit them where it's important to them. Holiday shopping is going to be key. I think that's why you saw Trump roll back some of those China tariffs. He doesn't want those to hit American households during the holiday season. I think that's going to be helpful. But this notion that Democrats on Wall Street would support Donald Trump over Elizabeth Warren, I think is huge. It speaks volumes. But you're right. It may be a Wall Street dog whistle to the Democratic base.
So, Alan Tonelson, I think there's two things there I think we want to unpack. One was maybe some further elaboration on your thoughts on what happens with this Wall Street threat. Does it have any teeth with the primary electorate? And B, she mentioned the president's move of rolling back tariffs till further out in the year with respect to China. Speak to that as well.
Well, regarding the Democratic primary electorate, there is no doubt that those who vote in primaries and who turn out for caucuses are quite a bit farther to the left than the rest of the Democratic voting base, or at least voters who call themselves Democrats when they talk to pollsters. And so the question today is really the question that's been before Democrats since this campaign began, and that is, how much do they want to win? And secondarily, at what cost? Are they willing to accept a supposedly more electable candidate with more appeal to those outside their own party in order to beat Donald Trump, even though this candidate, presumably Joe Biden, or some other moderate who may emerge, however unlikely that seems, however much that moderate candidate doesn't really float their collective vote? And I think the answer is still very much up in the air.
Okay, now to pivot from there, how do you think this parlays into Trump's plan to roll back those tariffs?
I'm not certain that the Trump rollback of these tariffs was really necessary. I think it could be helpful. Certainly it's going to give more shoppers more of a price break on popular Christmas and holiday items than they might have had otherwise. But it's a little hard for me to proceed from the assumption that because a certain item might be 5 or 10% cheaper, or even 20% cheaper than it ordinarily would be, that voters will then say, well, and I've got Donald Trump to thank for that. In particular because his overall China posture, his basic decision to, quote, get tough on China, which I would actually argue is better described as getting smart with China. But the so-called getting tough, getting smart with China policy is very popular. The particular steps that he's taken to put that policy into effect are certainly more controversial. And it's interesting that all of the Democratic primary candidates, except for Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, have said, yes, we should get tough with China, but no tariffs because they hurt Americans.
So what does that mean? If she's in front of me, I'm going to say, Senator Warren, what does that mean? How do you get tough with China without hitting them in the pocketbook?
She's the one who, in theory, favors tariffs, but for Kamala Harris or for Pete Buttigieg or for Joe Biden, for that matter, it's really not clear what they mean by that, or if they mean anything except then some exercise in purely political posturing. Because the fact is that nothing else has worked to move China off the dime, or even to oppose any significant costs on China for clearly predatory trade and broader economic policies. And even though I'd say that the two countries are no closer to a deal than they were before, I think there's no question U.S.-China policy has taken a much healthier turn under Trump, and that's basically popular. And I'm not sure that this Democratic posturing will work for that much longer.
Okay, so you wrote this piece on Reality Check, and I read through it, and I thought it was great. Now, it's not necessarily in tune with everything that we just talked about, but it brings back into the conversation that we had earlier, which had to do with the Ukraine and some of this impeachment effort. But I'd like to get your take on that, at least for you to analyze it from your perspective. When we come back from the break. We're also going to have legal analysis from attorney Manny Alejandro. All of that and more when we come back. This is Liquid Lunch. He's Alan Tonelson. She's Jen Kearns. I'm Rich Valdez. Stay tuned.